Good evening, descendants of Airdrick. Thank you for joining us for this Winter League Week 5 review and Week 6 playoffs preview show. I'm Destiny of a Dragon Warrior, joined as always by Diabetes II. Welcome, Diabetes.
Thank you, sir. Glad to be here at the conclusion of the Winter League. It is warm outside, at least in my neck of the woods, so I guess that means things are heating up for the playoffs.
Playoffs? Talking about playoffs, I'm just trying to finish a seed.
We saw a lot of that this week, especially with the potential for mega dungeons, either in the process of finding our required quest items in Erdrick Skier or to get to the Dragon Lord later on. I think we saw a pretty good mix of both. We just saw a great example of the madness of a very complicated Charlock there in the Group 9 race between uh, Miplet and Sawnirath, and then Yakko also off stream. But regardless, yeah, lots of that this week. Speaking of which, let's take a look at what the actual results were for our various races. Again, most of these were covered in the last 2 days via vodcast. We had a massive group of races that all took place on Wednesday evening. We could not cover them all, obviously, so we did what we could, and we broadcast the rest of those over the weekend. And we ended up with this for week 5.
Week 5, of course, was a positional grouping round. So, Group 1 consisted of the players with the top cumulative scores going into Week 5, Group 2 with the next top four players, and so on and so forth. So, the first couple of groups guaranteed playoff spots through most of them, playing for some playoff seeding. Theoretically, more advantageous to have a top seed, but with the volatility of Winter League and Dragon Warrior Randomizer as a whole, don't know how much of a total benefit that would be, but certainly prestigious and makes yourself feel good by being at the top of the pack. Then those middle groups, Group 4, Group 5, Group 6 in particular, had a lot of playoff implications where players were right on the cusp of if they finish first and get 5 points, they guarantee a playoff spot. If they finish lower and only get 2 or 1 points, they might be in jeopardy or eliminated outright. Group 7 had players that were right on the cusp fighting for the hope of a potential 14-point tiebreaker, which ended up not happening. And the one potential spoiler in the group, man, spoiled it for the other three of them anyways. And then group 8, 9, and 10 were kind of our consolation prize groups of players who had been mathematically eliminated from the playoffs, but still competed for the friendly competition that we have here and for the love of the game or the love of the suffering through stair shuffle, depending on how you want to look at it.
Yeah, we had a lot of great races this week. Again, with those positional matchups, lots of competitive races. Again, highlighting here our top four runners coming in. We saw a couple of these runners. I think I don't remember exactly who was in Group 1 for Week 3, but Joe and Aaron both were. Judge Joe coming out on top again in this one is going to be probably unsurprisingly our number one seed overall. Not to spoiler the overall standings, but I think that was pretty much a foregone conclusion. The winner of this race was going to be in that position. So kudos to Judge Joe, one of our new to DWR runners, first DWR event as far as I am aware of, and congrats to him. But again, everyone else in this group is going to be in a fine position heading into the playoffs as well. Looking at some of these as well, you will notice a few of the results have multiple 1s or 1.5s, depending on the number of players. Those were instances where we had more than one player forfeit. That's just the way the points work for those. Whatever the minimum points available for that race, that's what somebody who does not finish or does not start, depending on the circumstance, is allotted. So it did have some potential to impact the playoffs, but as things turned out, none of that really did. So the results stand as they do. Any other results this week stand out to you, Destiny, as we head here toward the playoffs?
I always take a look at our former Winter League champions. Aaron, one of them participating this year in Group 1, finished with 2 points out of Group 1, but still in a very comfortable position going into the playoffs. And then our three-time Winter League champion, Angel FM, there in Group 3, finished in that race with just 2 points. So maybe a bit unexpected for Angel to be in Group 3. Certainly nothing to be ashamed of as any competitor, but maybe not what you'd expect out of the top dog historically in Winter League, and only coming out of there with 2 points. We'll have to see in a moment how that shakes up in the total standings and the playoff groupings, or where Angel finished up there. GG's to Chris and Ryguy, and of course EMP in that group as well. And then with our 2025 Summer Tournament champion, Beta Kappa Omega Strep, coming into Group 4, which, depending on the results here, might have been in some trouble if only earning 1 point, earned 5, winning that race and locking in his position guaranteed into the playoffs. Engine Dave and Big Slam Moo in there with 3 and 2 points might have been on the cusp for playoff possibilities, might have been looking at a tiebreaker race. We'll see if the final results are. And then Chad Bird with probably a disappointing 1 point result there. Was one of the couple of players in the groups who were bitten by not being able to find a final required location in the seed. So exploration ended up being one of the big variables in week 5, not only with the stair shuffle, but maybe surprising to some with the combination of Big Swamp and Small Map. I'll always say that Big Swamp and Small Map are both deceptively challenging. It removes the possibility of a reverse coordinates count, and with the Big Swamp, everything kind of just looks the same with all of those big swamp tiles. You don't have the feel of, oh, here were some mountains and deserts and the different landscapes to kind of mentally capture out the different layouts of the land. And then small map, you're also not able to easily define coasts, and that ended up being trouble for a couple of our players this week and determined some of the results.
Yep, so those are the Week 5 results. Again, as Destiny mentioned, several of them at the top really had more implications just on playoff seeding, the middle groups on playoff qualification or not, and then the remaining groups primarily for bragging rights, if you will, maybe trying to get a win out of what may otherwise not have been the most successful performance in the tournament. But we're all here for fun at the end of the day as well. So kudos to everybody on finishing out the regular season. Now that will introduce the fact that your prize for being good enough in the regular season to finish in the top 16 is to keep playing. I'm not sure if that's a positive prize or a negative one, but it is the result regardless. So here are this year's final standings for the Winter League regular season. As was indicated, the Group 1 winner would be the number 1 seed, and in this case it was indeed Judge Joe, capping out with 23 points.
Very impressive regular season from Judge Joe, as well as yourself, Diabetes the Second, fulfilling the prophecy of that name, also being the second in the total standings there with 22 points, followed by Quinn Patrick, Aaron, Chris, Zatrex, Artorias, Beta, rounding up to 18, Ziggy with 17, Silly Dabbit 16 and a half, Ryguy, Jeff, and Angel with 16, myself with 15 and a half, and then the aforementioned Slamu and Engine Dave finishing with 15. Then you see that dotted line there, that is separating the top 16 players in the standings. So that indicates the cutoff of the top 16 players who qualified for playoffs. In this case this year, no tiebreaker race was required, just with the way that the points shook out. We had a clean cutoff of 16 not being a shared point total with anybody. There was possibilities of a 14 or a 15 point tiebreaker play-in race. The math didn't work out for that. If you were hoping for that drama, unfortunately, clean cutoff here at 15 points. And then you can see continuing on there, the remaining players who unfortunately fell short of that 15-point playoff this year.
Yeah, and again, just highlighting our new participants this year. We did have two, I believe, that made the playoffs here. We have Judge Joe on the top, NG Dave on the bottom there, in first and 16th, respectively. So again, great to see new members of the community and new racers to have that success. But also, there's a lot of veterans on that list. A lot of us that have been there before. Whether it's those who have done well in the Winter League previously, in the Summer Tournament, or just have been longtime racers. There's going to be a lot of fantastic racing to come here in the playoffs over the next couple of weeks. And again, no shade to anybody else who is either in that first four out between EMP Tybalt, another one of our newer players here, first event, Synth and Man, just not quite able to get over that 15-point threshold to finish in the top 16, and to anybody on the right side of the screen as well. Again, a lot of great players, a lot of people who spent a lot of time not only performing for us throughout the 5 weeks here of the regular season, but also with preparation, some volunteering, and just kind of being positive members of the community. So hopefully everybody on either side had fun, and hopefully the rest of us on the on the top of the left there will continue to have fun of one sort or another, either personal fun or fun for chat. I'm not sure which is better or worse.
Well, we'll have to see as things develop, and yeah, GG's to everyone who unfortunately didn't have the Winter League go their way this year and didn't qualify for playoffs. Everyone's just been a pleasure to work with on the admin side, and everyone getting races scheduled quickly and participating and having a lot of fun with the seeds, and even if some of them didn't go your way. And wish you all the best of luck as you hopefully continue on your Dragon Warrior Randomizer journeys. We have the Seed of the Week ongoing between standard, non-standard, co-op, as well as Dragon Warriors 2, 3, and 4. In a couple of weeks after Winter League is wrapped up, we will resume our weekly races, both standard flags on Sunday evenings as well as non-standard flags on Wednesday evenings, and casual pickup races and other adventures along the way that we're love for you to chat about and share in the Discord. Thank you all for participating. It's been a pleasure having you.
Indeed, it has. But for those of us who will be advancing, let's take a look at what we're going to be facing here in the playoffs in the upcoming Week 6.
So for week 6, here are our flags. Top of the list is Treasure Guards, so that's continuing from a couple of the flag sets in the regular season where all of our required quest items are guarded by one of the mid-tier enemy treasure guards that we have to defeat. First time we see rotated mirror dungeons. This tricky flag set, somewhat parallel to Stair Shuffle, where it makes the cave navigation that much more complicated. Although without Stair Shuffle, you know which cave you're coming into, but might be thrown off by how to navigate or rely on that Radiant spell if you're not quite coordinated, where you don't immediately recognize, okay, there's a path down and there's a path to the right. I'm in Swamp North. Not that straightforward in this week. Hurt More Doors remains on, which was one of the flags there in week 5, so you don't need to rely necessarily on magic keys to open doors. Just blast them with a Hurt More and bust your way through. And then the introduction of a viewer favorite flag, Bonk Damage. 2 hit point bonk damage in this week, which means each time that a player bonks into a wall, a door, an NPC, a mountain on the overworld, that bonk will register 2 hit points of damage to that player. Could be a different way to take intentional death. Few ways to take a look at that flag and possibly use what would be thought of as a disadvantage to become an advantage. We have random key and herb carry still on from week 5, so don't know how many keys or herbs we will be holding on to. Normalized monster XP and gold is on, which is a return of a flag from week 2, where we won't know exactly how much XP and gold a monster will get from each of the enemies, but it will be within a controlled range, consistent with how strong or weak the enemy is, so a little bit of variability there. NPC Guillotine is on. I was joking on commentary yesterday that, of course, NPC Guillotine flag is off in the week where players just seem to be troubled by NPCs in the back of Cole or Garanham blocking their path. Well, it's on this week, a little bit of a quality of life improvement to talk to those NPCs and make them disappear for the moment. And then a few more of the cosmetic flags that are on with the kind of watch out, watch your heads theme, masked overworld locations with those half cave, half town indicators. So you have to actually enter the location to even see if it's a town or a cave. And then random town entrances is back on, where the entrance point of a town might not be where it traditionally is. You might be entering from the right side of Breckenary or the bottom of Garanham and throw you off a little bit on the navigation there and walk further to that Breckenary inn that you're accustomed to in some examples.
Yeah, so overall, this is going to be an interesting flag set. I would say overall, it rings a bit more true to standard with some annoyances and some things to overcome. Obviously, I think the big thing is probably the mirrored rotated dungeons, just navigating. Although we don't have the expanded chest pool on for all those additional locations because the two don't cooperate well together, that would be a challenge. We also don't have to deal quite yet with the combination of that with stair shuffle, but I think that's going to be a big problem this week. And the random key and herb carry can always be problematic. Again, random keys, although mitigated somewhat by Hurt More Doors, if Hurt More doesn't come early, if you only have access to 2 or 3 keys, really got to keep an eye on where you happen to find a key stray in a chest, or where's Romulder or something. And same for the herb carry. Could be implications throughout the sea, but could also be implications for the end game and getting through Sharlock, kind of doing that little bit of incremental healing, and also against the Dragon Lord as well. So this should be another really interesting week. I expect a lot of strategic bonking, perhaps, as Destiny indicated. There's reasons to look at it as both a positive and a negative. And then maybe some more cut down NPCs, which is everyone's favorite.
I think early and mid game grind versus exploration decisions are going to be very interesting this week, especially amongst, again, we're into playoffs. We've got a lot of the top players who have been able to handle the Winter League flags up to this point. Good, should be very competitive. Going to have some exciting races.
All right, speaking of those races, sorry, I was talking to the chat, but not talking to Destiny here. So, speaking of those races, let's take a look at the groupings. If you were intrepid enough to take a look at all the rankings for the players on the sheet earlier, you probably already have an idea of what the groups are going to look like. But here we're going to reveal them officially, starting with Group A, our number 1 seed, Judge Joe, Beta, Ziggy, and NG Dave in, I believe, 1, 8, 9, and 16, respectively. So there is Group A.
And then Group B, I have my partner here, Diabetes the Second, Artorias 308, Silly Dabbit, and Big underscore underscore Slamoo.
In Group C, we have Quinn Patrick, Zatrex, Ryguy, and my fellow commentator in the booth, Destiny of a Dragon Warrior.
And then a very interesting Group D. We have Aaron 2U2, our number 4 seed, Just Chris, our number 5 seed, and then Jeff, the developer of the fork that we're using for Winter League, as the 12th seed, and then our 3-time champion Angel FM as the 13th seed.
Ooh, lucky 13 or unlucky 13? Not sure. It depends on the results of this week. Who's the lucky one and who's the unlucky one? So there are our playoff groups. I think these are all going to be fantastic races. Just looking at the matchups, as has been frequent throughout the tournament so far, we have a couple of current and or former admin matchups. We have Artorias and myself in Group B. We have Juef and Angel, plus also Aaron as a former admin in Group D. Again, former tournament champions, former summer or winter league champions. We have finalists and such. So there's going to be a lot of fireworks, I think, throughout the playoffs here, starting here in week 6. Anything else stand out to you, Destiny, among these?
Group A has the intrigue, as you alluded to earlier, of Judge Joe and Enjadave. Both in that group are two first-time Dragon Warrior Randomizer event participants in that Group A. Will one of them, or possibly both of them, upset two competitive longtime players, Beta and Ziggy, and move on into further playoffs into week 7? Or will Beta and Ziggy stamp their veteran experience and use that to their advantage to eliminate our newcomers, despite Judge Joe being our #1 seed? That's going to be very interesting.
Absolutely. And of course, moving into week 7, just as a preview of things to come. So we can't really draw this as a true bracket per se, as you'll see Group E and Group F, so our semifinals. The winners of the groups will be in opposite sides of the bracket, and then the second place finisher will be on the opposite side in each group. So, for example, Group A, first place finisher will be on one side, the second place finisher will be on the other side, so you will not have to face somebody 2 weeks in a row. That goes for every group. Also, the winners will each face two. Each group will be 2 first place finishers and 2 second place finishers to make things nice and even.
And then, although I don't believe it's been explicitly said, then of course the third and fourth place finishers of the 4 week 6 races will be eliminated and will not move on. So even if a player doesn't take first place, their winter league is not over. So how aggressive will they be, or will they settle for second and just be good enough to move on? And then week 8, we'll have our final 4, which will be the first and second place finishers of our 2 week 7 races. So first and second out of our group E and first and second out of group F. So there won't be any rematches of players from week 6 to week 7, but then there potentially will be playoff rematches going into week 8 if, let's just say, in that example, the two newcomers, Judge Joe and Enjadave, both win week 6. They will be separated for week 7 in Group E and Group F, but then if they both finish in either first or second place there, they will face each other again in the final 4.
And a reminder that the Final Four is a 2 race series, and scoring for that one will be based on aggregate time. So just because you don't perform particularly well in the first race doesn't necessarily mean that you will not still have the opportunity to win. Obviously, you'll have some work to do in terms of coming from behind, and vice versa. Just because you've won race 1 doesn't mean that you've guaranteed effectively your spot at the top of this winter league. So again, a lot of intrigue, a lot of interesting math and considerations to consider for the Final Four, because it's just not a matter of finishing, it's where you finish relative time-wise to your opponents in both of those races.
And then with 4 races this coming week and then 2 races each of the next 2 weeks, we're really going to try our best to get all of these races broadcast live. Of course, a little bit is dependent upon when these races get scheduled based on the participants' scheduling and what works for the group of them together. But it would really be great to get all of these live broadcasts. And in order to do that, we will, of course, continue to need volunteers for restreaming and tracking and commentary. So we will announce these in the Discord as soon as any and all of these races get scheduled, and try to recruit volunteers to get restreams going live. And if you're up to it, especially for the folks who have been eliminated but still want to contribute and participate in Winter League, doesn't take much for commentary to jump on and talk about what you're seeing and explain what's going on in the races or tracking. Press the buttons as people level up and get items. It's a lot of fun, and look forward to getting those restreamed and showcase all of the action here coming into week 6, week 7, and week 8 as we move into the playoff portion of 2026 Dragon Warrior Randomizer Winter League.
Speaking of which, everybody will be sorted into their groups for scheduling purposes here immediately after the conclusion of our broadcast here tonight. Again, it's helpful, although do its best for you guys in terms of your each individual schedules to get things done. But as Destiny indicated, if we can set things up in such a way that we don't have races on, the same day at the same time, that's ideal. But again, do what's best for each group. We know that with 4-player groups, it can be a little bit more difficult than heads-up races to get all of the schedules aligned. But we would appreciate that. As Destiny said, any volunteers we'd be happy to have, and hopefully we can put on 8 more live broadcasts here in the next few weeks to wrap up this year's Winter League.
The friendly competition continues here in Alfgard. Thank you so much for joining us here for this preview slash reveal show here for the playoffs. And again, GG's to everyone who has both made the playoffs as well as those whose winter leagues have finished at this point. We look forward for an exciting playoffs. Anything else that needs to be added here, Diabetes, before we wrap up?
Not that I can think of. I think we've covered just about all of it. Hopefully, again, everybody has enjoyed the regular season. Looking forward to the fireworks of the playoffs coming as well. Hopefully, we'll see everybody back a couple of days this week for some playoff racing, whether it's in the booth or helping out, or if it's just viewers. Of course, our players, I suppose they need to be there too. But we hope everyone will join us over the next couple of weeks for these playoff races, and looking forward to all the excitement to come.
Fantastic. Well, on behalf of Diabetes the Second and the rest of the admin team, I am Destiny of a Dragon Warrior. Thanks for joining us here. Good luck and have fun to our 16 playoff participants.